This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
Hi guys, I'm Carl Gruber, author of the new book True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship. Are you tired of being caught in the web of negativity that our ego-driven world mandates as reality? Say one positive thing and all you hear is, get real, get your head out of the clouds and prepare for the worst. Well, I'm here to tell you that negativity is not reality, and that the opposite is true. This is why I have written and published this book. In my new book, I show you how you can walk hand in hand and in alignment with the law of attraction and eternal universal spiritual truths, which will allow you to make all the positive, loving, happy, abundant, and healthy things you desire your reality. Find out how you can become a consistent co-creator of your life with the universe and get out of that negative spiral of lack, attack, and judgment. Get your copy today of my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship by Carl Gruber, now available as an ebook and paperback on Amazon. Hey friends, welcome once again to another awesome episode of this podcast, World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment. Now, if you haven't figured it out yet, let me remind you that this is the show that brings the world's top teachers, masters, and leaders of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening right to you in a one-on-one manner. It is incredible, the amazing, beautiful light and spiritual growth we have been able to share with you over the last 4 years. So let's continue to stay on that fast track today. Before we head off to meet today's guest, please click that subscribe button below to help support this show. And also click on the link below to order my brand new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship, a book that will show you how to create a rock-solid personal foundation for yourself and become a consistent co-creator with the universe to help manifest the life you truly want. So let's find out about today's guest. Jonathan Robinson is a psychotherapist, best-selling author of 10 books, and a professional speaker from Northern California. Now, he has reached over 200 million people around the world with his practical methods, and his work has been translated into 47 languages. His work has appeared in Newsweek, USA Today, and the Los Angeles Times, as well as dozens of other publications. And in addition, he has made numerous appearances on the Oprah show and CNN, as well as other national TV talk shows. He spent more than 30 years studying the most practical and powerful methods for personal and professional development. His first book, The Experience of God, included interviews with such notable people as the late Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, Deepak Chopra, and Dr. Wayne Dyer. Jonathan's second book, The Little Book of Big Questions, became a New York Times bestseller, and did his book Communication Miracles for Couples. And now he has a new book called The Enlightenment Project. So welcome, Jonathan, to World Awakens. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thank you, Carl. It'll be a lot of fun.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, I just published a book and you've got 10 already. This is awesome. So I might have to take some author tips from you. But, I'm really interested in what you do. I'll have to tell the audience that Jonathan's book just appeared in my mailbox, if it doesn't disappear here. The Enlightenment Project, his newest book, and I'm so grateful it just showed up. And you have a good PR guy because he knew who to send it to. And I'm just now diving into it, and it's already a phenomenal book. But I've got to ask you, how did Jonathan come to be a psychotherapist and best-selling author? I mean, I read that you had a mid-childhood crisis at the age of 12 and that you were depressed and even suicidal. How did you go from there to here?
Well, I was blessed to have a very dysfunctional family. I started to see that, I needed a way out of this. So around age 12, when I got depressed and suicidal, I used to have a stepfather who used to beat me a lot. I realized that one way out was through self-help and meditation and spiritual methods. So I started meditating at age 12, and within a few years, I was in pretty decent shape from, learning how to connect with the silence within. Then I made a hobby of deciding I would interview all the spiritual leaders on the planet. So if you've heard of them, I have a podcast too, Carl. I don't know if you know that, called Awareness Explorers. And I've interviewed everyone from, Deepak Chopra to the Dalai Lama on that. And you might know Byron Katie and Adyashanti, those types of people. I'm always asking them, what's the best method you know of for tapping into inner peace? So I kind of collect these methods, and I put all the best stories, lessons, and methods in the book, The Enlightenment Project.
Now, so let me get this right. You were interviewing these icons of spiritual enlightenment when you were still a youngster and in adolescence?
Well, no, I started doing the interviews in my 20s.
Okay.
But in my adolescence, I was taking meditation courses and just trying a bunch of stuff, including psychedelics, to see what was possible. Mm-hmm. And I just got very interested in what is the technology for finding peace and happiness in this world. It obviously wasn't going to come from my good family, but I also saw that, people who are rich don't necessarily experience much peace or happiness. So I really was looking for how to work on myself. And you know what? I realized very early on that I was lazy. So I focused on methods that generally took less than 5 minutes of effort. So Oprah called me the world's expert on quick spiritual methods. And I'm very proud of that title because I've been able to reach a lot of people with new methods that most people don't know about that can help them to tap into peace, joy, and love very quickly.
A couple things that you said is, number one, when you were a youngster, first of all, you felt blessed to have a dysfunctional family. Most people would just sit there in angst and continue to be depressed. And you, at the age of 12 and in your teenagehood, discovered meditation and enlightenment and spirituality when, probably the vast majority of kids like that would go buy a gun or find drugs and alcohol. Yeah. You were very fortunate in that aspect.
Well, I had an uncle who was a hypnotist, and he could turn my normally shy sister into Mick Jagger in 5 minutes of talking to her.
I read about that.
Yeah. So I thought, well, I want to be somebody different. How can I learn to change myself into somebody who's feeling peaceful or joy? So that's what spurred me on originally. And, if you read enough self-help books, a lot of them are kind of crappy, but every now and then I found something that really worked. And then I made a career of letting people know about what really worked.
Yeah. Wow. So you have and again, I read this in your book, you've meditated over 15,000 hours, and incredibly, you've personally interviewed over 100 spiritual leaders. And what was it like? Did you have particular ones that maybe stood out I mean, personally, I would love to have talked to Dr. Wayne Dyer that you thought were more significant personally to you of the people you've interviewed.
Yeah, of course. Wayne Dyer is one of them because he was a big supporter of my work. He actually bought the rights to one of my books and sold it at his lectures. So he was
Wow.
very kind to me and really supportive. I liked him a lot. It's too bad he's gone now. I really like the work of spiritual master Adyashanti. I liked Byron Katie. These are people who I've gotten to know a little bit. But I was with a spiritual teacher who was relatively unknown for like 26 years. So I really learned that being part of a group can be very helpful. And, he kept a low profile, but getting help from people, whether through books or personal association, I think is really critical in the spiritual path. And I was blessed to be able to have so many of those connections.
Well, let's talk about that mentor and teacher, Dr. Jeffrey Martin, that was the one that you worked with, I believe, 26 years. How did you find him, and what was it about his teachings that made you gravitate to him and stay with him all those years?
Mm-hmm. Well, Jeffrey Martin is a Harvard psychologist who studied 1,200 enlightened people and wanted to find out what were the methods that actually led to enlightenment. Nobody had ever studied that before. So he found that most methods that people have been taught, like prayer or yoga, or even transcendental meditation or Vipassana meditation, are very ineffective in actually leading people to persistent feelings of deep peace. But he found that there were like a dozen methods that were very effective, and most of these methods are completely unknown. So he created a course and a group to disseminate these methods. And I found that those methods were, in fact, the best. And so I've been trying to, his courses cost a lot. So I tried to put in my book a lot of the methods that would be accessible to a large group of people without having to pay thousands of dollars. The book's $15 and they can get a lot of the same methods. And, these methods are ones that almost nobody's heard. I'll give you an example. There's a bunch of them in the course, but one of them would be to simply describe back and forth, like you and me describing back and forth, what awareness is. Because awareness is the portal that leads to deep peace, connection, and even bliss. But most people don't know how to stay in pure awareness. So on my podcast, which is called Awareness Explorers, and in the book, I describe all these different ingenious ways to tap into awareness. But one of the simple ones would be to say, just complete that sentence. Awareness is an open receptivity of all my senses before the ego, judgments, and ideas take hold. And then you would say what awareness is. And we go back and forth. And soon you're like in the state of awareness. And that state is phenomenal.
Well, let's have a conversation about awareness. So my understanding as a spiritual student, awareness is going past the consciousness, which is so based in the dualistic world of the ego, to a different level of consciousness, beyond consciousness. Would that be a correct assessment?
Well, people can have different assessments. I think more important than a correct intellectual assessment is to have a direct experience of deep peace, presence, and even a sense of connection to something bigger than your ego. So, you can get into arguments over is awareness consciousness, is what's consciousness, but I find that those discussions don't necessarily help people to have direct experiences. And I think what we really want in this day and age is a direct experience of peace, love, and joy.
Well, also, I'd like to pursue this. You're a professional psychotherapist. Now, I've had a couple psychotherapists on here. Dr. Bob, the late Dr. Bob Rosenthal, former co-chairman of the Foundation for Inner Peace that publishes A Course in Miracles, Greg Unterberger. But what exactly does psychotherapy, how does it help you understand enlightenment? What does it have to do with it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Well, first of all, enlightenment can happen to us in moments where you're just completely present, kind of egoless, and you feel connected to everything. And, most of us have had experiences like that, maybe in nature or making love or on drugs. But psychotherapy deals with kind of like our conditioned patterns. We get triggered in relationships. We get triggered to feel anger or frustration or depressed. And psychotherapy can kind of like go under the hood and look at what created those patterns and maybe how to disperse them a little bit. And so it has an overlap with, say, feeling peace and good, but the methods are different. And it kind of approaches it from two different angles.
Okay. So that's a good explanation. I understand that.
So sometimes I give people what I would call spiritual methods so that they can access awareness and peace very directly. And sometimes I give people psychological methods that help them to deal with their conditioning, like their triggers in relationships and other things.
Okay. Well, also what I've read is that you teach people practical methods to do this. What exactly are these practical methods that you're talking about?
Well, let me give a funny story and an example of a very practical method. My favorite methods, some of my favorite methods are take less than 10 seconds to do.
I like that.
Because I'm a lazy person. Now, you may have to do them over and over again throughout the day, but when I've interviewed a lot of spiritual leaders, ranging from Mother Teresa to the Dalai Lama, a lot of them mention the importance of gratitude for connecting to a divine reality. And so I kind of had my ear open for that. Well, I had a friend that went to India, and when he came back, he seemed filled with gratitude. He was just like so grateful for everything. And I said, what happened in India? And he said, well, my guru gave me a magical mantra for feeling overwhelming gratitude. And I said, well, what was the mantra? And he said, well, you have to go to India and get it from the guru directly. Mm-hmm. Well, I always want the best method. So I traveled all the way to India. Have you been to India, Fred?
I have.
Carl?
No, I have not.
Yeah. It's a hard place to get to. And so I go there, fly 18,000 miles, then I take a rickshaw for 4 hours, and then I wait in line to talk to the guru for 3 hours. I'm kind of jet lagged, worn out. But I finally ask him if I can get this magical mantra for feeling gratitude. And in a deep Indian accent, he says, yes, my mantra is the most powerful mantra on earth. So he leans in to whisper it in my ear, and he says, whenever possible, repeat these words. The mantra I give you are the words, thank you.
Yeah, wow, 18,000 miles.
Yeah, right. I look at him, I say, that's it? I traveled 18,000 miles to get thank you, that's it? And he looks at me very sternly. He says, no, that's it is the mantra you have been using. That makes you feel like you never have enough. My mantra is thank you, not that's it. That's it will take you nowhere.
Yeah.
So I'm pissed off, and I look at him and I say, well, thanks for nothing. And he says, thanks for nothing is not the mantra. You must say thank you from your heart many times a day. So when you eat good food, say thank you to God. When you see a sunset or your pet or your mate, say thank you from your heart, and soon you'll feel overwhelming gratitude. Well, since I traveled all that way, I thought I'd try it out. So I get in a taxi that has air conditioning in India. It's like 100 degrees. And I say, oh, thank you for the air conditioning. I'm really grateful. Yeah. Then I get to my hotel and there's a bottle of clean water. And I say, oh, thank you for the clean water. And then I open up my computer and I think, wow, what a marvelous machine. Thank you for this computer. I Skype my wife. I'm saying thank you to Skype. And then I see my wife appear. Thank you for, my wife. I'm talking to her on the other side of the planet instantaneously for free. And it hits me like how much we have, and tears roll down my face of gratitude. My wife says, wow, that must have been some mantra. And I said, well, you have no idea. But, in reality, if you say thank you from your heart for each of the little things in our lives, you do tap into a grateful way of being and feeling connected to life. So that's how simple some of these techniques are, that, it takes 5 seconds to feel your heart and say thank you to the universe. And other techniques like that can launch you into a higher consciousness very quickly.
Isn't that beautiful? Something that simple can be that effective in raising your awareness. And did you really say to him, thanks for nothing?
Yeah, I was pissed off. I mean, that's not what I expected.
Wow. Was that the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi?
No, I did spend time with him, but this was a guru that you probably wouldn't know his name.
Wow, that is great. I love that. So, another thing too that I'm very interested in, and I have used this phrase quite a bit myself, talking to people. You have in your new book, the Enlightenment Project, the phrase, "The teacher will come when the student is ready." So, what does that mean?
Well, I'll use another story to make this clear. We often think that we need a great guru or something as our teacher, but I think more important than that is your hunger, your intention for whatever it is you're looking for. Mm-hmm. You could be looking for love or peace or maybe spiritual powers. And if you have a strong enough intention, almost everybody's a teacher. Your dog is your teacher. Your book is a teacher. And many years ago, I was leading a spiritual group, a spiritual movie group, and we would show these profound movies every week. And, movies like Schindler's List or Gandhi. In fact, one week I was going to show the movie Gandhi to this group, but I wasn't going to be there. So I gave the movie to a friend, and it was in a DVD sleeve. But the movie was supposed to be Gandhi, but the actual movie in the DVD sleeve was the movie Men in Black 2. Now, Men in Black 1 and Men in Black 3 were pretty good movies, but Men in Black 2 was a horrible movie. And so they were used to seeing all these profound, deep movies, and then they are shown Men in Black 2. And I had them write up each week what they learned from the movie. So I got back that people found this movie incredibly profound and life-changing and everything because they had the intention of finding something meaningful from this pretty inane movie. And that's true in life, that if people go with the intention, I really want to learn to open my heart, for example, and they're really hungry for that, well, their dog can teach them that, their cat can teach them that, their friend down the street who's kind can teach them that. So part of the enlightenment journey is to feed that hunger in different ways. And I try to do that in the Enlightenment Project book by giving them a lot of inspiring stories as well as useful methods.
Boy, that is a great example of our own very real personal power and the power of intention and where you direct it, and you can be productive if you do that. I'm a big fan of Lynn McTaggart's book, The Intention Experiment, which really poignant about the power of our intention. Now, I know you've experienced and tried out numerous forms of spiritual practices and techniques. Are there one or some that's struck a more powerful alignment and note with you more than most?
Yeah, there are. In fact, for your listeners, I give out my 5 favorite for free because I don't think these things should cost a lot of money. And, I've been able to reach a lot of people by just giving a lot of stuff out for free. So I know about 200 spiritual methods. And my 5 favorite I give out on for free at my website, theenlightenmentproject.net. So if people go to theenlightenmentproject.net and put in their email address, they get an ebook on the 5 quickest ways to awaken to inner peace. And they also get an audio meditation of the 5 quickest ways. So let me give you an example of one of those ways. One of those ways is to, for example, think about a person or animal that you have great affection for. Now, I love my wife. I usually focus on my dogs because I have no baggage with my dogs, And so I think, and people can do this right now just for 1 minute, where they think of this person or animal that they really care about. And if you want, you close your eyes. And as you think about them, think of the most wonderful times you've had with them, times where you felt really connected to them. And allow yourself to breathe in the feeling of love and connection and care. And if you want, you can imagine hugging them or holding them in a way that helps you to feel even more connected. And just think of how grateful you are that they're in your life. And if you want, tell them how much they mean to you in your head and see how happy that makes them. And just imagine that with each breath, you can breathe in a deeper feeling of care and gratitude for this being. And when you're ready, if your eyes were closed, you can open your eyes. So what you're doing is you're trying to create a place where you can open your heart and learn to open your heart very quickly. And that really is the beginning of tapping into deeper love. Or there's methods that tap into deeper awareness very quickly. And most people don't know these methods. Most people are using methods that are 2,000 years old. Now, I don't know if you have a computer, but I bet it's not more than 15 years old. So we have computers that rarely are more than 5 years old, but we're using spiritual methods that are 2,000 years old. And some of the methods that have been invented in the last few years are like power tools. They get you to a place of love or peace much more quickly.
And what I think is so beautiful about what you've the example you just gave is how quickly you can turn around from feeling bad to a better feeling place. Just now, when we were sitting there doing that little meditation about a animal or pet that we loved, immediately I felt not only love but gratitude, which automatically raised my vibrational level, my emotions too. And so, you don't have to go to like a week-long spiritual retreat for thousands of dollars when you can do it within 10 or 30 seconds.
Exactly. And the first time you use a method is the time you're probably the worst at it. So imagine if you got really good at it. I can generally go from a stressful event to peace in about maybe 40 seconds now. And when you can do that, your life changes. It becomes a lot better.
Well, also, again, like I said, I've only had the opportunity to just scratch the surface on your new book, The Enlightenment Project. But you pointed out what I read that, mankind has gone through thousands of years of its history where little, if any, progress was made technology-wise, and that is until the Renaissance came about, but nothing seemed to change spirituality. What has science and technology changed spirituality or spiritual practices?
Well, it hasn't, because it was never studied scientifically. And that's what I liked about the work of Dr. Jeffrey Martin, is that he actually studied it very scientifically to find what actually works, what leads to enlightenment, what methods actually lead people to have deep peace, and what methods don't. And unfortunately, in this culture, the methods that are most popular are the ones that are shown to be actually the least effective. They've generally been around thousands of years. That's why they're popular, but it doesn't mean that they work in this day and age. We have a lot more to contend with. We have a lot less time than we used to have. So we need kind of updated spiritual methods. And you can actually now with the internet find out, give methods to thousands of people and they can say this one worked, this one didn't, which that's never been done in the history of humanity of really seeing what works. And, science works. It shows you stuff that, you can learn stuff from science very quickly. We now have iPhones because thousands of scientists have figured out this works, this doesn't, and we put it all in a phone. What if we could do that for our own brain, where we know how to avoid certain negative feelings, or we know how to tap into peace or connection with others? That's another important thing. Most of us are not that good at connecting with others. What if we knew that certain ideas or methods lead to great relationships?
Well, I do have to say that, of course, the technology of the internet, which works at lightning speed, there's a technology that has allowed people to connect from around the globe in spiritual manners. Myself personally, I have 1,000 new friends in the realm of enlightenment and spiritual awakening from around the world that I never had before, all because of my computer. Even my phone, I have an Android, and I have the app from Rhonda Byrne's The Secret. On a daily basis, she sends me affirmations and things like that. So there is some technology that is positive in helping a spiritual awakening.
Yeah, and we need all the help we can get. And it's really important to connect with like-minded people because, we live in a dangerous cult called Western culture. And that cult has various ideas about what leads to peace that really don't lead to peace. Having hundreds of millions of dollars does not lead to peace. Having beauty doesn't lead to peace, but we get fed these messages which aren't accurate. And a lot of teachers have said the same thing. Peace is inside you, the kingdom of heaven's inside you. And they gave their best methods 2,000 years ago about how to do that. But the methods now are better, quicker, and unfortunately, most people don't know about them.
Western culture. That is well put. I really like it. And you're right, because many of these quote spiritual methods don't work because they're based in the egoic world. The whole world is driven that way, and it can be dangerous or toxic. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
Well, and when you think about like in Jesus' time or Buddha's time, women back then were not considered actually people.
Right. Yeah.
So we live in a totally different era, thank God. And they also didn't work a lot. They had many hours a day to meditate. Well, meditation's great, but most people don't have many hours a day to do it.
Well, boy, and that is a point well taken. Thank God we finally let the divine feminine awaken in the world. Unfortunately, there still are large pockets where women are completely oppressed and suppressed and abused. But compared to back then, yes, the divine feminine is awakening and women are finding their power. And I'm so grateful for that. Again, referring to your new book, The Enlightenment Project, I saw a chapter titled Deconditioning and Letting Go of Triggers. Now, you kind of touched on this a little bit more. I would like to find out more about that.
Well, it's really important that people learn how to decondition themselves, and there's several methods that I found to be very workable. Let me give an example of one of them that's very simple. Some of them require more explanation. When you are triggered, and that happens every day for people, whether, stress or relationships or whatever, money issues, how do you let go of that anxiety? Well, there's something called the Sedona method that I talk about, in which you first ask the question, am I trying to get more control or approval or security right now? So you identify what are those three categories you're holding on to. And let's say it's more control, like you're worried about money. That's usually a control issue. Then you ask, could I let go of wanting control just for right now. And you
Mhm.
give your brain that decision, like, could I just for right now let go of worrying about that? I mean, that's a very simple way of getting back to a place of peace and dealing with a trigger. But there's other ways of dealing with deconditioning that involve things like hypnosis or loving a part of yourself that is anxious. That love tends to melt the anxiety or the depression that people sometimes feel. And I go into some of those methods, and it's really important, since we're all subject to all this conditioning and triggers, that you learn to do this to yourself, so you don't have to pay a therapist, thousands of dollars to help you through it. You can do it yourself.
Wow, this is just wonderful stuff. We're talking to Jonathan Robinson, a psychotherapist, author, speaker. What I like, what you've already shown us today, is it doesn't have to be complex to move to the path of enlightenment or awakening. I mean, again, I know we already mentioned this, but I mean, gosh, you could be in line at 7-Eleven and have a quiet time, while you're waiting for the line to whittle down, and just do some of these practices.
Yeah, I mean, how about here's another 5-second practice. Can I allow myself to fully be here and enter into stillness and silence? Can I just allow things to be exactly as they are and enter into a moment of stillness and silence? And you just kind of stop and imagine that you were just born and you're looking out these eyes for the first time, and things are still and quiet. And even if your mind is chattering, you don't have to engage it. You can just realize that you're an awareness that hears that mind chatter. And so getting to a place of quiet and stillness in that way doesn't need to involve many years of meditation. It's really very accessible to us if we know the right attitude and approach.
So I don't have to sit in a cave and chant Om for 1,000 days. I can do it in just a few minutes.
No, you don't. And that's good news for all of us.
Wow, this is great. One thing that, I'm a big baseball fan, and I think I got hooked on page 1 of your chapter 1 when I saw a quote from Yogi Berra. Well, let's see, what was that quote? That is,
I think it's something about if you don't know where you're going, you might end up where you're headed, or something like that. Oh, here it is. If you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else.
Right. Yeah, God bless Yogi. It's just awesome. I used to have his baseball card. But the other quote that I really like too, I look at, and I found this interesting too. In your chapter of your book, Grace, Miracles, and Motivation, you have a quote from late comedian George Carlin. I am experiencing life at a rate of several WTFs per hour. So if you don't know what WTF stands for, look it up. But that is so George Carlin. But being a big student of A Course in Miracles, where line 1 of page 1 is there's no order of difficulty in miracles, what exactly is your opinion? I mean, are miracles easy to come by? What's if you want to talk a little bit about what's in that chapter?
Sure. Well, miracles to some extent are in the eyes of the beholder, because the fact that we're talking across the nation instantaneously could be seen as a miracle, unless your mind somehow creates an explanation that you know what's going on. We all have these little smartphones now. I don't know how this works. Somehow it plays music, it talks to people. It can play books for me. It can make pictures. The way it really works is something called PFM. Are you familiar with what PFM is?
No.
Well, PFM is what makes iPhones work, makes planes fly. It stands for pure fucking magic.
Yeah.
And that, when you get down to it, is how almost everything works, because scientists have some explanations, but at the bottom, they don't really know how anything works. They don't know how electrons move. They don't know how photons do their thing. So we have some of these simple explanations, but it's not really at the bottom knowing how any of it operates. And so a miracle is really, could be said as everything, but I've been blessed to have encounters with angels. I've had encounters with gurus that could create things out of thin air. I've seen things levitate. None of this fits into my worldview, but they happen. So I called them a miracle. And I think the more you spiritually evolve and raise your vibration, the more you start to see and experience what you could call miracles.
Well, and of course, this show is produced as not only an audio, but as a video. Anybody watching this show, I don't even know if you noticed, Jonathan, but when you held up the phone and it said the time on it, 11:11 on your phone, just as you held it up just now. So I go, whoa, mama. That is
Right. And synchronicity is a great thing. You start to see that like the universe is conspiring with you. It's always showing you meaning and all kinds of things. And when I was early in my path, I started to see how all those things were happening. But now they're less interesting to me just because I know that the universe is conspiring with me to kind of play games with me and has a sense of humor.
Well, I don't know if you want to discuss this, but I mean, I would be curious. What was your encounter with angels?
I've had a few encounters, but mostly when I've been in the desert with a bunch of people and played music. Now, I call them angels. What they were from a very human standpoint were balls of light that surrounded us and made sounds with us that seemed to dance around us. There were usually 4 or 5 of them in a group. And, everybody in our party saw them. So we actually go to certain places and we engage with these, call them balls of light. Some people have called them orbs. Some people call them angels. But think of them as a very high vibrational being that doesn't have a body in the way we think of it, but they have bodies made of light.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that sounds like an amazing experience. Yeah. So since my brother lives in Northern California, I'm gonna have to bop over and go hang out with you in the desert.
It's been a lot of fun.
I have to ask, what was it like to be on the Oprah show? What was that like for you? Was it scary? Were you nervous?
Yeah, I was nervous for sure. I was on several times. Oprah's very kind. In fact, here's an interesting story about Oprah. The first time I was on her show, she went up during the commercial break and said, "Hey, I really enjoy your book and I enjoyed your story about your dog," because she's a big dog lover. And she asked me what my dog's name was. And I said, "His name's Rama." And she said, "Well, how's he doing?" And I said, "Well, he's actually not doing very well. He started to have these seizures and I'm very worried about him." And Oprah said, "Oh, I'll be sure to pray for him." Well, that was our entire off-camera conversation. Well, 2 years later, I'm on her show again. And she comes up to me and she says, "Good to see you again, Jonathan. By the way, how is Rama?" Well, at that time, Oprah was the most loved person on earth. And it made no sense to me that she would remember this 10-second conversation from 2 years ago about my dog. So I said, "Who's Rama?" And she said, "Rama's your dog. He was having seizures and I prayed for him. How is he doing?" And I said, "Well, he's doing better, thanks to you." And I said, "How'd you remember that?" And she said, "Well, growing up, I really had nothing. I never even lived in a house that had a toilet. But the one thing I had going for me was that I really cared about people. So I made a vow that I would show my kindness and care whenever I could." And then she turned to her studio audience who was watching this conversation and she said, "Seems like that turned out pretty good, don't you think?" So I think a lot of the spiritual teachers and leaders I met really had a very open heart, were very kind. And she certainly demonstrated that to me. And that inspired me as I met these people. a lot of them had faults as well. They had very human failings, but it showed me that if I kept working on my heart, if I kept on working on trying to find more peace and love, that I could also inspire people.
Wow, this has just been a ridiculously great conversation. I'm so grateful, and I'm going to practice that mantra, thank you, which I normally do anyway, but I mean, even more so. Could you state one more time where people can go to get those 5 practical methods and receive I believe it was a meditation with that too?
Yeah. It's theenlightenmentproject.net. theenlightenmentproject.net. And then there's a place to put in their email address. And they'll also get the first chapter of the book for free, an ebook of the 5 quickest ways to awaken to inner peace, and a guided meditation. And it's all free. And on that site, they can also learn about the book as well.
Man, I'm going to go and sign up for that. That is awesome. So I can't wait to get that. Well, Jonathan Robinson, I'm so grateful. And, we talked earlier about synchronicity. I had never met you. You're only on my peripheral knowledge at that time. And your new book showed up in my mailbox like 3 days ago. And I go, as soon as I open, I go, I have got to get this guy on my show. And so for me, I'm going to leave instead of saying thanks or nothing. I'm going to say thanks for everything. I really mean that. I mean, this has been a blast. Thank you, Jonathan, for being on World Awakenings.
Real pleasure, Carl. Thanks for the work you're doing.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.